Hello there! Gungan month is drawing to an end, and so I decided to make a slightly different video. A video where we explore what would happen if Jar Jar Binks hadn't been saved by Qui-Gon Jinn at the start of the Phantom Menace. What if Jar Jar had been killed by the MTT at the very start of the film? And so, how would that have affected the whole story of Star Wars, really? So the actual story in the Phantom Menace goes something like this. Jar Jar is saved by Qui-Gon Jinn from a MTT which is ploughing through one of the forests on Naboo, and Jar Jar therefore feels he owes a life debt to the Jedi and assists him. Assist is maybe a strong word. He accompanies him throughout the film. This causes Jar Jar to play a significant role in the politics of the time, and therefore gives emergency powers to Chancellor Palpatine. And so what would have happened if Jar Jar had never been able to do any of that? Let's find out. So without Jar Jar Binks on the scene, Obi-Wan Kenobi and Qui-Gon Jinn would never have found the city of Otoh. They may have tried to infiltrate Theed another way and may have been successful, but it's very unlikely that they would have found Queen Amidala at just the moment that they did in the film. Therefore, they would have escaped the planet, but without any of Queen Amidala's entourage or the Queen herself. I do imagine, however, that they would have used the Naboo Royal Shuttle, despite not having any royalty on board, because they would have freed the pilots and probably would have had some guards with them. They would have said that they wanted to make an appeal to Coruscant because communications were down on the planet of Naboo, and so they would have got inside of the Naboo Royal Starfighter without the Queen, and just like in the film, they would have been shot while trying to escape the blockade, and therefore they would end up having to land on Tatooine just like they do in the film, except this time there was no Queen Amidala with them. Oh yeah, and obviously no Jar Jar, because, yeah, he's dead in this story. And because Queen Amidala isn't with them and Jar Jar is dead, they never really meet Anakin Skywalker. They see him in passing in Watto's workshop, but really, Amidala is the only one who talks to him in the workshop, and the only reason that Anakin actually talks to Qui-Gon is because Jar Jar gets in a confrontation with Sebulba. So without Jar Jar or Queen Amidala, when the sandstorm comes, Anakin wouldn't be there to offer them safety. And so I would imagine that Qui-Gon and anyone who had gone with Qui-Gon from the Naboo Royal Starfighter, maybe some of the crew, would have found safe haven, or safety from the storm at least, in one of the cantinas on Tatooine. Inside the cantina, I would imagine that because the Boonta Eve Classic pod race was coming up, lots of bets and wagers would be being made. Qui-Gon would realise this and realise it was a chance for him to make money and therefore buy the parts from Watto that he needed. He would talk to people and work out really who the competitors were, and realise that Sebulba was probably his best bet. He would hear of this child, this human boy, who was able to participate in a pod race, which therefore meant that he must have Jedi reflexes. Qui-Gon would make a note in his mind to try and seek out this boy, because he might be worth bringing back to Coruscant to train as a Jedi. So Qui-Gon would eventually find Anakin, and would decide that he was going to bet on Anakin to win the pod race, like he does in the Phantom Menace. And so the story on Tatooine would play out much the same way that it does in the actual film. Qui-Gon would escape with Anakin, and they would all travel to Coruscant, but this time they wouldn't have Jar Jar Binks or Queen Amidala, and more importantly, Anakin would never have met Padme. Upon their arrival, Qui-Gon would insist that someone needed to represent Naboo in the Senate, but he would need to talk to the Council, the Jedi Council that is, just like he does in the Phantom Menace as we see it. Palpatine would step forward to represent Naboo. After all, his plan requires him to become Chancellor of the Republic. So Palpatine would represent Naboo, and although he may not have first-hand experience of the suffering that Naboo is undergoing, because of his superior political experience compared to Queen Amidala, he would find more support within the Senate than Queen Amidala did. In order to improve his popularity within the Senate, he would return to Naboo to try and appear compassionate towards his people, to improve his chances of succeeding Chancellor Valorum when he pushes for a vote of no confidence in the Chancellor. However, this time, there is no way of contacting the Gungans for their support against the Trade Federation. This time Palpatine would have to rely on allied senators, people that supported him in the Senate, which there would be a few of. This time the assault on Naboo would be far more large scale. Palpatine and any senators that had decided to ally with him in this assault would attack Naboo, first from space and then a ground assault would be launched. Because Palpatine would want to show what a great leader he could be, he would basically manipulate the Trade Federation as Darth Sidious to make them surrender very easily. In doing this, he would show the Galactic Senate that he was the right person for the job to succeed Chancellor Valorum. The Jedi would not have taken part whatsoever in this assault, and Anakin wouldn't have been on Naboo because he would have stayed on Coruscant. And so Darth Maul would not have been chopped in half and would have remained as Darth Sidious's apprentice. Qui-Gon would have survived and so would have trained Anakin. However, Obi-Wan and Anakin would have become very close like they did in the films as we know them, and so they would have often gone off on missions together, while Qui-Gon was doing other things, for example finishing his training in becoming a Force Ghost, or he would have been sitting on the Jedi High Council, and so when he was doing that, Obi-Wan and Anakin would go off and do things together, rather than Qui-Gon and Anakin. Count Dooku would have left the Jedi Order, but would have just left it to become Count of Sereno. He would have had no part in the Sith or the Jedi anymore, and would have been looked highly upon by the galaxy as a whole. Now on to the events of Episode 2. But in this reality, Anakin and Padme have never actually met. Anakin is not infatuated by Padme, and so doesn't go to Naboo with her when she has to take refuge when the attempts on her life are made when she's living on Coruscant. This would mean that Anakin and Obi-Wan would travel to Kamino together. They would fight Jango Fett, but this time he wouldn't be able to escape because there'd be 2 Jedi rather than just 1. This would mean that the Jedi would never travel to Geonosis, and so the Clone Wars would have to be initiated another way by Palpatine. This time Palpatine would plan an assault on Coruscant, an assault which would cause the clones to be called into action, and this assault would be led by none other than Darth Maul. Palpatine would always intend for Anakin to become his true eventual apprentice, but for now he would keep Darth Maul as his apprentice, and Darth Maul would act as a warrior, similar to the way that Darth Vader acts. He doesn't play a large part in the politics of the Empire, and in a similar way Darth Maul wouldn't really play a large part in the galactic politics during the prequel era. Instead, he would be a warrior. Therefore, Palpatine would never need General Grievous, and so General Grievous would never be on the scene. Instead, Palpatine would need someone to be the figurehead of the Separatists, because Count Dooku wasn't there to do that. And so Palpatine would put Newt Gunray as the figurehead of the Separatist Alliance. The Clone Wars would happen in a very similar way to the way that we see it in the animated show, except this time Darth Maul would not be the leader of a criminal organization. Instead, he would be an assassin, a warrior for the Separatist Alliance. And in this reality, Count Dooku doesn't really get involved until he decides he should return to the Jedi in order to aid in the efforts against the Sith. Because, after all, he's not being manipulated by Palpatine in this reality. He is able to realise that the Jedi are under threat from an unknown adversary at this point, and that is Darth Sidious. Palpatine would try and attempt to draw Anakin to the dark side, and so would tell Maul to target Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan in order to try and target the ones that Anakin loved. However, unfortunately for Palpatine, Darth Maul would be unsuccessful in his attempts on the life of Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon, and in this reality, Count Dooku. There would be no siege on Mandalore because Darth Maul is working for Palpatine and not for himself in this reality. And so, when Palpatine is captured, although he would tell Darth Maul to capture him, and is on the invisible hand, it wouldn't just be Obi-Wan and Anakin that turn up to rescue him. It would also be Count Dooku, Ahsoka, and Qui-Gon Jinn. Darth Maul would be completely overwhelmed, and would very, very quickly be subdued. However, because there would be so many Jedi against him, they would not kill him like Anakin kills Count Dooku. Instead, Darth Maul would give up the secret that actually Palpatine is the Sith Lord that the Jedi have been looking for. Palpatine would then realise that his cover was blown. There would then be an epic battle of the Jedi versus the Sith. Obi-Wan, Qui-Gon, Count Dooku, Anakin and Ahsoka versus Palpatine and Maul. Ahsoka and Anakin would confront Maul. Now remember, in this reality, Maul has continued his Sith training, and so would be far more powerful than we've ever seen him in the films, or in the Clone Wars. Anakin and Ahsoka would eventually kill Darth Maul, but not in time to prevent Palpatine from mortally wounding both Count Dooku and Qui-Gon Jinn. Anakin, Ahsoka and Obi-Wan would now face Palpatine, and after a long, brutal fight, Palpatine would be defeated. He would be taken in front of the courts, and would be found guilty of treason against the Republic. The Jedi Order would continue, and Anakin and Ahsoka would eventually find themselves sitting on the Jedi High Council. And so, you see, if Qui-Gon hadn't saved Jar Jar Binks in the Phantom Menace, Palpatine would have been unsuccessful, the Sith would have been defeated in Episode 3, and the galaxy would have remained a republic, the Empire would never have risen, Anakin would have remained on the light side, and the Jedi would have continued. Well, that is, unless Jar Jar Binks is a secret Sith Lord, in which case, the films would have gone exactly as they did, because Jar Jar would have manipulated them to do so, and if that's the case, this video would have been far, far shorter. But that's about it for today. Thanks for watching. Remember to comment down below your thoughts on Star Wars without Jar Jar Binks, Star Wars with Jar Jar Binks, or anything else Star Wars. Remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel. Remember to watch any of the other videos I've made. There's a great one in the bottom left. Maybe it's about Jar Jar, maybe it's not, but give it a click. YouTube's found it specially for you. Thanks for watching. Bye!